Well, it seems to be working. I seem to be working, which is good. There's a nice picture of a white paper towel. That's always a good way to start things. While I was gone, there was a power outage and things had to get reset. So got started late because needed to, needed to reset some stuff a couple of times. But I'm here, and so is the Savoia S.21, and I need to try to remember what was going on. So, I don't know, let's just take off the paper towels. Oh, yeah, there's parts. There's airplane parts here. Look at that. All sorts of prime airplane parts. Right. I was going to get these ready to get painted. Most of it's red, and then there's some stripes. That's right. I unmasked it, and there's some paint that needs to be sanded off, especially there. That was a weird leakage. I thought I guess maybe I didn't mask it around the attachment point for the cap thing here. So that's going to take a little bit of sanding, and then there's some here, a little bit there, and then weirdly right at the tip of the nose there. So I'll get to do some sanding. Oh yeah, and then the wing. I put some filler in on the wing because it hadn't filled in, so that's going to, yeah. So we get some relaxing sanding with Dyson Dungeons today. And then the stripes, the red, white, and green stripes. So I said I have, the red, which is the same as the red of the body. And then there's white, and I have a nice white that will work that I bought for the Apollo. And then green, and I had two greens, and one was too dark and one was too light. So I spent way too much money on just a couple of other greens, some spray paint, and I'm going to test those on the stream probably. But I am back after being gone for a while again, and I can tape this. I can tape this up so the inside of it is nicely painted. That came out, I think, actually pretty well, including like the gun ports and the braces for the wing and for the vertical stabilizer. I think that came out okay. But I need to tape this up as carefully as I can so that I can spray paint the red. And then there's a question. I've been kind of wondering about this, about whether I think that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape the edge this way. I could tape it from the inside, okay? And then the edge would be painted red, or I can tape the edge and just the outside would be painted red. And I'm thinking, if this were the real airplane, the wood would show on the edge. And besides that, there's this little indentation here, which would make taping it from the inside really quite difficult. So I'm just going to tape the edge. And then this will still be brown. But I'm going to, there's a couple of spots. There's one little spot there that needs to be painted that kind of tan, yellowish tan color. Yeah, just some little bits of touch up. I'm going to do that first. I'm going to do the little bits of touch up before I tape it so that, well, of course, I want the paint to dry before I tape it, right? Then I have to remember to tape all of these little bits on the inside, including the seams here, the one that, especially the one that leaked. Now, it's not so terrible if the red gets on the inside. I can paint that over, but it will show. So I'm going to do my best. This is the cockpit. So that's okay. I really don't know why this was done as a separate piece, unless it's designed to like come off. It's the hatch. I think it's the hatch for rearming. That is, putting more cartridges in for the machine guns. But it would have been a lot easier for everybody if that had been molded on to begin with, because now I need to kind of tape around it and see how it goes. And then I drilled little holes. You can see them there. Little holes for the machine guns to shoot through to make it look a little more authentic. But that also means that that's a place where the red paint could spray in. So that's another place that needs to be taped. Now, I'll do my best and I'll spray red paint on it and see how that goes. So what is it du jour here? Do a little touch up with the yellow, the desert yellow, around the edges here just before I tape it. Sand the wing where I put the filler in. Okay, and see how that turns out. If that turns out okay, then I'm going to attach the ailerons. And I do that before I paint it because the stripes go onto the ailerons as well. Okay, rather than trying to paint the stripes separately. And then the floats, this, if you see the curve here, underneath the curve, it's painted this desert tan color. Desert yellow. Above it, it's spray painted red. And I need to inspect them to make sure that the seams are mostly invisible. So I'll be doing that too. I'll be doing some inspecting the seams. Right now it looks pretty decent on this one. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty tired, jet-lagged from the trip. But we'll get through this. Oh, well, there's coffee. All right. Need these things out. The colors that I used for the inside of this. And the brown wash I decided not to use. It fits, but it's not fitting right now. And stir the paint. So these next 2 weeks will be kind of iffy as well. I plan to do the stream Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 until 1, like I had been before I left on this latest excursion. But I'm dog watching again, and so there could be interruptions or breaks or things like that. But I'm going to do my best to be predictable and regular here in terms of the stream that I'm doing with the Savoia S.21. I'm going to be incoherent today, even more than usual. I keep saying that I'm incoherent because, well, at a certain age, you just become incoherent. But, jet lag. So I'm going to try to narrate what I'm doing or planning to do. And then I'm going to narrate what I'm planning to do. And then you all can find out if I actually get around to doing it or if I forget. So there's just these tiny little flaws, little spots that didn't get painted probably because of where the tape was. And if I'm going to tape the edge, so that part isn't red, then these need to be desert yellow. For some reason, there, it's like I wasn't getting paint on the brush or something. It was weird. And if I get a little bit on the outside at this point, that's okay, because I will be spending some time sanding the outside of this where the brown paint got where it shouldn't have. Getting it. Yeah, I figured I'd mess up a little bit, but I can take care of that when I sand it off. A little bit on the outside there. Right. I didn't want it. Okay, just look around the edges. I thought there was one bit back here on the tail. For the most part, this came out really well. I think I've got 4 thin coats of the desert yellow on here, and that covered nicely. I think that came out pretty well. What did I do here? Okay, well, I just made a mess of that. It's one of those where I just got when I took the brush away, I flicked it, I guess. So the nose part, that's going to be fairly easy to sand off. I'm not sure what happened here. This is a real easy thing to fix, but this is going to be a little bit difficult to paint. There's a fair amount of paint blobbed up on there. Using the technical term again, blobbed up. This in here. Make that dry. Well, I looked at one and it looked pretty good. I think this is the other one. Seams might show a little bit when it's painted glossy, but I'm not seeing them. primer. There's a little bit of fill in this little gap here. Can do that with an X-Acto knife without breaking anything. This one. Where did the other one go? This one with a really tiny little pointy blade. That disappeared while I was gone. Let's see. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a. You can't if it's not on camera. There's a line here. There's segments that were supposed to be like put together, but that was right where I was, doing the sanding. It looks like it got filled in a little bit. That's better. There's a little bit of an indentation there from the sanding. Nothing really I can do about that. Well, there is, but it would require getting some filler, putting a little filler in, waiting for it to set up, and then trying to sand it without reconstructing the indentation. Okay, so these are going to be tricky. They actually gave us decals to cheat, but the part on the bottom of the float, right underneath this ridge line, is painted that desert yellow color, the same as the inside of the fuselage, and the rest of it is painted bright red. And so it's like, how am I going to do this? Obviously I need to paint this, the desert yellow, but then do I try to tape it? Do I tape it off? Very, very carefully tape it off? Probably that's how I need to do it. And then try to get a nice line on there. I don't want to paint the desert yellow after I spray paint the red. I mean, that would be probably the, if I were really confident, that's the best way to do it. But, you're moving along, painting along here, the edge, and you're right up to the red. And then all of a sudden, like a little bump happens or something. And then the desert yellow gets on the red and I can't touch up the red. At least it's really hard to do that because it's been sprayed on. Oh my, okay, that's not good. Yeah, that's going to need a little work. I'm just seeing this now, but just like the top was not aligned. I didn't see it when I was sanding it, but the bottom here is not aligned. And so there's an obvious little ridge there. So I need to sand the bottoms of these, at least that one. Yeah, there's one here too, along here. Just sand that down. The problem with that is that, it's got this really nice edge here. And if I sand that off, it's going to affect that as well. I think, although it's going to make it take a little bit of extra time, I'm going to put a little bit of filler on here. I'm just going to run a bead of filler along there. and then sand that down rather than sand the high end down to the low end. But it was the same issue as the one up here, which was that it's just slightly misaligned. And these I sanded down, but it's okay on the top. It doesn't show, but on the bottom, it would mess up the nice sharp edge of the float. Well, just one more thing that will take a little more time so that I can't get things done. But yeah, so I'm going to paint the tan, the desert yellow part first, and then clean up the edge like I'm going to be doing on the fuselage, and then tape it. And if some red gets onto the desert yellow, then I'll sand it down a little bit and try to paint it and get a nice clean edge. Hopefully, if I get it onto the red, I can wipe it off real quickly, the desert yellow, so that it doesn't mess up the red. I don't want to resort to the decals because they'll just look like I stuck decals on the bottom. Okay. So I wasn't planning to do this, but now that I'm inspecting them, it's pretty obvious what happened here and kind of what needs to be done to fix it. So get my pointy-ended toothpick and my filler. This will give me something to do Wednesday. I get to sand that down. And then since I said I'm going to paint it the desert yellow after it's sanded, I'll go ahead and do that. I'm not going to reprime them, I don't think. Not with. I think it'll be okay for this color. You would think after 30 hours of traveling on trains and planes that I could have spent some of that time thinking about a monologue. But you know what? I didn't. And so I have, unfortunately, nothing much to talk about. It's getting to be summer in about, a million years here. There was a kind of, depending on where you were in the country, it wasn't very nice. It was warmer, but it was extremely bad weather. So if you were in the US, at least there were just another whole series of storms. There's been a lot of those. Usually in the spring, it's just like that. You get tornado season all through Tornado Alley, which is most of the south central and southeastern U.S. and in the central part too, like Iowa. I guess while we were gone here in Michigan, there was kind of a sort of a warm day, but hugely windy, so that the air quality ended up being bad because of dust. And there were some fires in Oklahoma, So, yeah, the change of the seasons was not good for a lot of the country. But that isn't what I was starting to talk about. What I was starting to talk about is that in the old days, back in the day, there were, TV shows on broadcast TV. That's all there was. And I think they'd usually run like 22 episodes or something. There were lots of episodes back then. But then when the summertime came around, it all just went to repeats. That was the tradition. Is that the shows were, the new fall season kind of thing. And so during the summer, when we were out of school and mostly bored, and you go play outside, and you can only do that for so many thousands of hours. So we go play outside, but we want to come in and go brain dead with the television. We didn't have little portable screens then that we could carry around in our pockets to go brain dead. We had to sit indoors and stare at a apparatus in our living room in order to go brain dead. So we did that, but it was repeats. It was all this shows that we had just seen. What happened here? Did that open up? No, it's just. Can't tell if the seam opened up or if it's just the color of the filler. Let's see if I can see. Okay, well, welcome back. So yes, what I was saying is that back in the day, now I see that's what's happening. It's just the fill. It's actually just the red, the plastic underneath the primer. Yeah. So what happened, as I was starting to say and just kept getting distracted by, the thing I'm doing, is that when summer came along, it was repeat season. So everything on television, except for like the news and some of the, shows like Queen for a Day and Price is Right and stuff, when those started to come out, those were all repeats of things that we'd already seen. And sometimes they'd repeat like twice even. At least it felt like it. So since I'm old, when it gets to be summer repeat season, I'm just going to repeat some stuff that I talked about before. I'll go back to some of those topics. Why not? That was a long way of getting around to say that I'm not really having anything new to say, so I'll just restate old stuff. Yeah, I'm going to do that as a homage to repeat season, which I endured as I was growing up in the 50s and 60s. I don't know. I don't watch television that much anymore. So I don't know if that still happens, if there's like a repeat season, or if there's shows that go on for like many, many episodes. I think I just don't know. I actually don't really care either. So their television, take that. You don't have to watch things when they first come on. That was a thing too with television then too. Is if you didn't watch it, you missed it, and sometimes things weren't repeated. The shows that were in episodes, which was most of it, most of the television was in episodes. Those were repeated, but if there was like a special event or something, if you didn't watch it as it was being broadcast, which wasn't always live, okay, wasn't always live. That is to say, well, a lot of it wasn't. They'd say this show was recorded before a live studio audience. Didn't think of it very much, but it was probably a good thing that the audience was live. I mean, think of if you were recording it in front of a studio audience that wasn't live. That would be pretty grotesque. That wouldn't be good at all. But in the earlier days, there wasn't really they didn't really have good mechanisms for recording. So a lot of the shows that were on TV were actually live. They were being broadcast, which was a real thing then, cast broadly by the television stations. Which is why they had to put the disclaimer in that the show was recorded before a live studio audience. Although, given the, when laughter happened and things, I think that they still were using laugh tracks, which were developed early on for radio. The techniques were not very sophisticated then. If you listen to old radio shows, stuff from the 40s and 50s, even earlier, they'd say something that wasn't really terribly funny. Hardly any of it was really very funny, actually. When you listen to the old shows, there'd be this burst of laughter, and then all of a sudden it would just stop. They'd have maybe 5 or 6 different laugh tracks. He's to guffaws. And then it's pretty obvious that they were just playing those in. There's somebody with a laugh track button, laugh track on, laugh track off. Number 2, turn on 2, turn off 2, turn on 3, turn off 3. That kind of thing. It's rough there. So, when they moved, a lot of early television was old radio shows. Just they moved on to that. Fortunately, most of the radio actors, Burns and Allen, and even things like Dragnet and stuff, the people who did the radio show were, adequate actors for the live TV as well. The television started, and they just migrated those shows onto the new medium, most often using the same people because people were familiar with them. They were listening to them on the radio for years, and so they just ended up just watching them on TV. But then, like I was talking about, repeat season. That's what's going to happen on this stream, I think, is that I'm going to be going on to repeat season, and I'll talk about things like nuclear holocaust preparations and vacuum tube industries and things like that. So it won't be like finding the recording of me talking about those things and playing the recording. It won't be like the official repeat season where you got official repeats. Okay, I'll just revisit the topic. I'm just feeling little bumps along here that aren't really visible, and I don't know if they'll show or not. But I don't want to over sand it either. Not that sanding like this isn't just great fun. It's kind of relaxing, just rubbing away at it a little bit at a time with this extremely fine sandpaper so that it kind of polishes it at the same time that it but the gap is filled in. That's the important part. Is that the gap is filled in. Because you don't want the leading edge of the wing to have these openings in it that makes it look like pieces of plastic that weren't adequately cemented together. I think to be said for this filler is that it does harden nicely and it sands well, unlike some of the others. So it gives it the same surface texture as the plastic. There's a lot to be done on the back here. Get some fresh fine grained sandpaper. I'll just use this. Sometimes this really, really ancient emery cloth stuff actually works better. I'll give it a go. The difference with this is that it doesn't clog. Okay, what happens isn't that the abrasive on here wears out, it's that it fills in. This doesn't seem to do that. Go along the trailing edge of the wing here, and this will take a while. It'll take a while doing the trailing edge of the wing. So one day when on our trip, and I actually don't remember them like this, but back in the day, TVs were not very big. In fact, the very first televisions, the picture tube the giant cathode ray tube was maybe like 18 inches long, and the front of it, where the picture was diagonally maybe like 4 or 5 inches. And it was length and no picture. And so what they had, these were really pretty, this was pretty amazing, really. If you can imagine this, was a giant magnifying glass that you put in front of, I mean, this is a real true thing. They had a giant magnifying glass that you put in front of the picture, because the picture was like 4 inches diagonal. It was really quite small. And you couldn't have multiple people watching it, really. You couldn't even, two people couldn't get close enough to it at the same time. So it wasn't all glass. It was oil filled. I know these exist because I actually saw one. My uncle ran a television repair shop, which was a thing. And people made a living repairing televisions. They'd make house calls. You could bring it in. It would be cheaper that way because then you didn't have to charge for it. But TV repair people actually made house calls, which is pretty an amazing thing when you think about it. Because televisions were heavy, and not everybody even had a car. You couldn't bring it. It was hard to bring it into the shop. Okay, can you bring it into the shop? No. Okay, well, I can come out on Tuesday at whatever. And they'd come out with all sorts of cases full of vacuum tubes and things like that, because you never know which vacuum tube was going to be not working. But yeah, so these first televisions had really, really tiny pictures. And these magnifying glasses were actually, I mean, I remember it, I was little, so it seemed big, but it was probably like 10 by 12, maybe 12 inches horizontally and 10 inches tall. And it wasn't solid glass, it was oil filled with a clear oil, like mineral oil. Okay. And there'd be, curved glass on the front and the back. And it was just, it would have been really hard to make a chunk of glass. Really expensive to make a magnifying glass that big out of solid glass. It really would have been quite a feat. To do that. So to keep the cost down and the weight, I think, and to keep the weight down as well, there would be a curved front and a curved back. So, it was not exactly a precision lens. I'll just say that for sure. Definitely wasn't that. But it made it somewhat distorted. Of course, you'd expect that, somewhat distorted, but much larger picture. So people, 2 or 3 people could sit back a little bit further and not have to be right up against the screen to see what was going on. I thought that was pretty fascinating. But what started me on this, because, you always have to wander off, get off, sort of stay on the same topic, but, add superfluous detail from other events. So there was this restaurant that had some old televisions as, as their decoration. And televisions by then in general had gotten bigger. You could get like 18-inch diagonal tubes. I mean, those were pieces of furniture. Quite an investment, actually. But then they started making what they called portable TVs. You know, a television you could take with you. Not quite like a smartphone. I mean, it's not like you'd stick it in your pocket and carry it with you and watch. It was like, you know, they'd weigh 8 pounds or something. And the pictures, of course, were smaller because they had to be portable. You had to be able to carry them. But one of them was really small. It was like a 4.5-inch diagonal TV, and it was kind of funny because, but it wasn't 18 inches long. They didn't have to do that anymore. It was maybe 6 inches long. It was kind of funny that in the 1960s, people watch shows and things on their phones, but the screen wasn't terribly much different in size from the ones on smartphones now. It was just kind of amusing to see it. And of course, it had to have an antenna. That's something people don't think about much anymore. But in order to get a picture on this TV, you needed to have an antenna that stretched out at like 2.5 feet or so. It was this collapsible chromed metal tube squeezed down to maybe 6 inches long, but it would have extensible tubes on it. And you'd pull it out, and then you'd have an antenna that was 2.5 feet long, and that you could then rotate around and aim in different directions until you got to the point where the picture quality was something you could recognize as a picture. Now we don't think anything of tiny little screens. We spent decades and decades and decades doing research and spending money and marketing and getting people to spend huge amounts of money at the equivalent at the time for televisions that were ever bigger. Right? I can get this television even bigger. I think we got all the way up to like a 26-inch diagonal television back in the late 60s, early 70s. Massive things. Took 2 people to move it because the internal electronics, especially the picture tube, was so heavy. Now there's no middle ground anymore, right? You've got like a 74-inch diagonal OLED. I think they get up to 84 inches now. They're gigantic things that take up an entire wall in most people's apartments. Or you've got this little thing you carry in your pocket. Televisions that I grew up with, the 18-inch, 24-inch, 26-inch diagonal screens. They don't even use those as computer monitors anymore. It's just an awkward size, I guess, somehow or other, awkward size. That was the standard, and now it just isn't used anymore. Just an interesting thing. Sure, that was interesting for you. I probably should have been using the 800 grit on this. It would have gone faster, but not really in a hurry today because there isn't have much to accomplish. There's just this little lump here that's actually quite visible that is refusing to go away. But when I'm done playing around with this, and I'm satisfied that it's not too lumpy or ragged or anything, that the seams are closed. Attach the ailerons. Then it'll be ready to be painted. People nowadays, you have no idea what it is like to spend frustrating minutes, sometimes failure, adjusting the antenna so that it picks up the television broadcast waves to give you a decent picture. And what I mean by decent picture is something that people would find intolerable now. Yeah, it's a little bit less than perfect up here, but not too bad. Okay, that. I'm going to keep this out because I need to sand off the paint that's on the outside of that. I need to get that off before it's painted. The instructions, the float, the ailerons are not identical. This is the bottom. I can tell it's hard to tell the top from the bottom because the supports for the wing and for the engine above the wing are on both sides of the wing. But I can tell this is the bottom because of the holes here where the float's attached. I probably should actually test fit those before this can be painted. Those can be painted. That's all right. And then I'll test fit it. I might test fit it after it's painted because the paint's going to get inside those holes and they're going to have to be opened up anyway. Unless I plug the holes somehow, and I'm not sure I'm going to do that. Anyway, this is the top. So here, this is the top like this. And orient it perfectly. And the 9 goes here and 10 goes there. And they're on here and they're labeled. I kept the labeling so that I knew which one went where. So 10, I'm going to do the right side first. That's 10. This is 10. There we go. And the reason they're not identical is there's this little blip here, little blip of plastic that matches up with the one there, like that. You can see them. See they line up. So this goes on like that. It's just straightforward. Might, it's not a. I guess I want it to line up like that pretty well. So I'm actually going to, I think, put a little piece of tape on it because, they see it's possible after it's cemented together that it could be like a little bit, and an airplane does that. They're supposed to move like that, but I'm going to be painting stripes on them, and I want them to just be in line. So I'm going to put a little bit of tape on here to hold it in place on the up here and here. I'm going to use that instead of like I could put a clothespin on that, I guess. Yeah, I'm just going to do that. And this is another example of how to do stuff cheap. Oh, there's different kinds of them. Huh. Never really paid attention. There's like these rounded nose ones, and then there's these. I want to use the rounded nose ones if I have some more of those. So I know they make itty bitty little clamps for modelers. Specialized little clamps for modelers. I've seen that in hobby stores and kits and stuff. And they're pretty cool, but I don't have them. But I've got these old clothespins that are like a family heirloom. I mean, really, I think they belonged to either belonged to my mom or to my aunt. I can't remember exactly which one, but they're kind of a family heirloom, and they're really useful for this. So I think I don't know if you can even get wooden ones anymore. I know they make them out of plastic, but these are nice robust springs and very poor build quality. And these were not. Yeah, I mean you can tell these were mass produced in a way that did not drive up the cost. Definitely not. So, but instead of buying the made for modeling ones, I just use these because I've got them and they're an heirloom, and there it is. I'm just going to use the contact cement on this. This stuff always works well. I could use. I've come to like using this. This is not made for modeling. This is made for just generically sticking stuff together. There's little tabs here, go into little slots in the wing. there's a couple of reasons I like this. One is it gives me an opportunity to correct errors. And the other is it likes working slowly. I can put it on one surface, and it's actually supposed to just sit there for like a couple of minutes anyway. Put it on the other surface, and it's supposed to sit there for a couple of minutes anyway. And it gives me time. A lot of people really like CA glues, super glues, cyanoacrylates, but I can't work that fast, and I can't work that precisely. If you can, they're really pretty good. They go fast. You stick them together, you put a little bit of activator on it, or just blow on it, and your parts are together. But for me, I'm not always very accurate in terms of part placement, so I need a cement that gives me just a little bit of opportunity at least to reposition things, but at the same time grips. Okay, it holds the parts together so that they don't fall and go off somewhere. All right, but it also gives me just some moments to reposition things, and that for me is quite important. It also doesn't mar the paint or the plastic. Okay, so if there's painted parts coming together, the other stuff it has to be down to the bare plastic. And this isn't the case here. So yeah, they stick. See how nicely they hold together? That lines it up. It's just this one to line up the parts. At least that's what it's supposed to do. Sure, it's actually doing that. Yeah, so that didn't work. I'm going to do the tape thing. Sometimes things just don't work out the way they're planned. It just doesn't happen. The reason I'm putting this on now instead of later, even though the instructions say to put it on later, is that these stripes go on the wings, and the way these are done, they're done with decals, okay, not paint. And they put the decals on the wing first, and then they put the decals on the ailerons. Okay, but I'm not using the decals. I'm using paint, and I want to make sure that the stripes line up. Okay, and if I painted these and then painted these, they might not. But if I put them together and paint them together, then they will. Also, the stripes here are only painted on the top of the wing, and I'm not sure when I do this if I don't want to paint the stripes on the top and the bottom. even though that's not how the model is put together. I think I might paint them on both the top and the bottom. I'm a little ways away from that, though, so I think that's lined up okay. I'll get the other one on the other side. This one goes like this. Yep, it fits nicely. Same thing with the cement that worked the first time. Let's see if it can work the second time. Done with putting the ailerons on. I'm going to clean up the spillover paint on the fuselage. That needs to be done. Paint needs to be sanded off. I'm not sure how long that's going to take. And then I'm going to test the green paint that I bought. Actually, I changed my mind as I was speaking. I changed my mind. I'm going to actually test the paint before I do the sanding on that. As I very carefully toss these in the bin there. Wasn't careful at all. That's no good anymore. That's still kind of good. That's still kind of good. That's still kind of good. If you're wondering, isn't the cement drying up on you? You put it on there and it's just sitting there. The answer is no. That's the thing about contact cement, is that I could let this sit for a half an hour, really like a half hour, and it would still grab and be just as good as if I did it now, which I'm doing. Just checking to make sure it's still sitting there. They get a little OCD about these models, but so this will be fine once I get this set. little tighter. What's up here? Excess cement in the groove there. The other thing is with the contact cement, I can do this. I can take the excess cement out like that, and I can't do that with others. Up there. I want there to be a little space there, but I want it to be even because that's a control surface that moves, right? So it can't be, there has to be a little bit of a gap, otherwise it won't move. Like in real life, not like on model life. Just to make sure it's lined up, and then say, okay, done with this. Get tape on my fingers. I really want, this is what I want there. I want the little piece of paper towel there. I'm going to put this in here. There. I should have, actually, I should just here I'm just going to set these on paper towel in the box. My box of parts. This one's ready actually to be painted. These two need to be dealt with in terms of getting stripes on them. I'll talk about that later. These need to be sanded down a little bit later. This piece of cardboard is now ready for reuse in some other fashion. We'll just come back here. So that. And they've got all these little pieces of cardboard that are, reused from boxes that keep arriving at the house. I'm keeping this one because it's white on the other side. And when I'm testing spray paint, I want to see how it looks against a primer. So I kept some pieces of cardboard that had white on them. This one is white because I sprayed a lot of primer on it. This is the one I'm using to test green colors. I'm just going to tape up some little squares. Tearing off pieces of tape that are too small. Just this thing here. I was just starting to lose my way here. I don't want to get green paint all over this, so I'm just going to tape off a section here. And I've got two different colors. So what I'm going to do is tape here and spray one there. And then take off that tape and then spray the other one here. And just throw things all over the floor, I guess. I don't know. Here they are. I've got whatever green this is, dark green. And I've got some other green. I have two greens. Hopefully one of these will be the color that I will choose. Well, I have one of the four. Right. They're nicely sealed, plastic wrapped all over them. It's important to have more and more plastic on everything, so that the entire environment is covered in it. So what was I reading lately? The microplastics, these, like this stuff here, which can't be recycled, right? That all goes in the trash and it breaks down or it gets into the ocean, which is really nice. With a park green. I guess, if you're painting a park, this is the color. I'm contributing to the planetary disaster. So microplastics are now everywhere. Anytime anyone tests anything anywhere, the ice in the Antarctic or the top of Mount Everest or anywhere, there's plastics in the sample. They are tiny, tiny little bits. Tiny, tiny little bits of plastic as this stuff breaks down, and the parts become smaller and smaller because they just break up physically, okay, from wave action or banging into each other, or being ingested by birds or anything like that. And so we're full of it too. I've seen some pictures where they say, like every year you eat the equivalent of a credit card of plastic. That's just ingestion. It's not even counting the stuff you inhale, but it gets into your bloodstream. This was I don't know if this is absolutely true or not. I can't vouch for it. It's just someone was talking about the microplastics, say that it gets into your brain. They found it now in brain tissue, which is kind of surprising because there's this thing called blood-brain barrier, where stuff in your bloodstream doesn't go directly into your brain. It diffuses across some membranes to keep pathogens and stuff out of your brain as much as possible. But apparently these microplastics can cross that, because what did it say? We have in our brains, our adult brains, the equivalent of a plastic fork. The forks that you get when you buy takeout food or go to a picnic or something. Yeah. So it's something to think about, is that the next time you eat with a plastic fork, you've got one of those in your brain. I'm throwing out some trash. Okay. Let's do park green first. I'm gonna start shaking this up. I'm in a not terribly well ventilated area, but I'm not going to be spraying very much of this, so I wouldn't recommend everybody do this. I've got a big box over here, in which I can spray things, and I want to get this test done. I'm just that's about it. It'll be off screen. You can tell it'll be off screen because I won't be here, but you might hear it. No, you probably won't, because this microphone just screens out noise, like the furnace going or the sump pump, or probably you can't hear this. No, you can't. You can't hear the little metal ball rattling around on the inside of this. I was just checking. And when I'm quiet, nope, nothing. It's amazing. Wow. I mean, that's pretty good. pretty effective screening. So I'm going to turn this green here. Be right back. Be back in just like 15 seconds or something like that. Yeah, now there's a green spot there. That's all wet. That's a pretty good green. I wonder, that one just might work. But not having thought this through very well, that's wet paint now. Where am I going to put the other green? I guess I'm going to put it here on this. Put it here. And try to aim it so that I don't get it on the other one. This isn't really being very well done, but it's getting done. And I'll be able to watch paint dry again. The alignment of my ailerons here. Still where I left. Okay, now I'm going to go paint this color here on here. This one looks a little too olive colored. You know what I mean? It's got a little too much brown in it. It's not as dark as the British Racing Green. On the other hand, you know, the real test is matching it up against the decal color. And the one of the four, there's 4 different greens. The one of the 4 that comes closest to the decal color is the one I'm going to use to paint the stripes. I'm going to just take this and just leave it over here in the paint box thing. I can't do anything with it until it's dry. How's the time going here? Oh, the clock has not sprung forward. It's not sprung forward. It is 11:30. Okay. Oh, time is going slowly. Dragging along today. So the thing about the stripes, let's talk about the stripes, and then I'll do some sanding on that, is it's on the tail and here. So it's green, white, and red, and the red is the same as the body color. Okay. And on the wingtip too, it's green, white, and red, with red being the same as the rest of the wing. So I've been thinking about this, you know, pondering this in my waking hours as I'm fitfully trying to fall asleep, saying, how is it best to paint this? And what I've decided to do is just using the wing here as an example. So I'm going to tape it off right here, okay, and paint the area that's going to have stripes, the whole thing white. So there'll be a white undercoat under the whole area that has stripes. The same will be true of the tail. This whole area on all of this and the tip of this going to be white. All right. Then I'm going to mask off the parts that will be green and stay white. So the mask will go there and there, or here it'll be there. Well, this will be attached, so it'll be there and there. So the green and the white area will be masked off. I want to paint the whole thing red. Paint this red and paint the tips red. So when I take the masking tape off, hopefully it will be nice straight lines and not be a mess. This area here will be white. This will be red. This will be red. This will all be white. And then I will mask off here and there and spray the green on. Okay. So the red and the green will be on top of the white. The white will just be an undercoat. Okay. And then the red and the green will go over that. There's a couple of reasons I'm doing it that way. One is that the white isn't going to cover all that well. Okay. I mean, even the red is kind of translucent. And so with a white undercoat, these other colors will show up pretty well. It all comes down to the masking, making sure that the masking is nice and tight and that the paint doesn't run all over the place, because touching it up is not impossible, but it's difficult because it's a spray paint, not a bottled paint. If I were good with an airbrush, and I've told this story so many times, I am not. I am terrible with an airbrush. It would be easier, because I would just use some paint out of the bottle, and then if I needed to do touch up, I would just use paint out of the bottle after I did the airbrushing. But I can't. So we'll see how that goes. The first two steps are actually going to be pretty easy. I mean, masking that off, okay, and painting this white, that's going to be pretty easy. Masking that off and painting the red, as long as the lines stay nice and clean, that'll be pretty easy. The green will be a little trickier. This edge, not so much. It's up against the white, so I just mask that off, okay? But on this side, it'll be a little trickier, because if there's a gap in the paint here, okay, and if there's a little gap in the paint there, then there'll be like a little white stripe showing right between the green and the red, and I don't want that. So what I'm planning to do is let the green, is when I put the masking tape on, is to have an infinitesimally small little strip of red, okay, tiniest little bit of strip of red show on the unmasked part. So when the green goes on, there might be a little bit of a dark line, tiny little dark line along here between the red and the green, where the green overlaps the red. But I'd rather have that, a tiny little bit of the green overlapping the red, than not. Which means when I mask this, okay, because the red goes right along the edge of the aileron, right along the edge, is I'll probably mask it a little bit, okay, so that a little bit of tiniest little sliver of red, like 1/10 of a millimeter, the smallest amount I can actually see, red lapses into where the green is going to go, so that there's a tiny bit of overlap between the two colors. So, that part is pretty straightforward. The red will just go on the white. And this is pretty straightforward. The green will just go on the white. This is the boundary that I'm most concerned about, getting a nice clean boundary line without a little white stripe showing. All right. So the wingtips will be pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of making sure the masking actually works. I need to decide whether to paint the stripe on the top and the bottom, both. And I'm leaning toward doing that. And the reason why, okay, is that otherwise I need to very carefully mask not just the boundary lines between the different stripe colors, but the edge of the wing, okay, especially this part here, okay, where it's green and white, so that there's a really clean line right along the leading edge of the wing. But if I paint the stripe all the way around, then it's just like wrapping the masking tape around. And I actually think that will look good. I think that would actually look good to have the stripe all the way around, so it shows on the bottom as well as the top. The tail is a little tricky. Okay, the stripe, this is where the horizontal stabilizer goes. So the stripe is above it. So I need to mask off that when it's painted white, and then make sure this is painted red. Okay, so there's going to be an artificial line here, an artificial boundary line right along the top of the red, the horizontal stabilizer. If I were using the decals, I would attach the horizontal stabilizer and put the decal on, but I'm not. So that's that. So this will be a little tricky in terms of masking down here, and I'm not sure quite how well I'll pull it off. But this whole thing will get painted white, and then I don't have the same issue of a boundary between the green and the red, except right here. Okay, right there. It's the only place. But this is a white stripe that goes up to here, up to that point right there. And then the front edge is green. And then this goes on here like this. This is all red except this bit here. The white stripe goes right up here, right along the trailing edge of the horizontal vertical stabilizer before it gets to the rudder. And then this point right here is painted white. Okay. So what I might do with this is the same thing I do with the rest, is I might paint this whole thing white and then mask that off here and then paint that red afterwards. I think that would look okay. I think that'll be okay, even though the red on the white paint might be a little bit different in terms of texture and gloss than it is on the primer. But it's a stripe. Okay, it's a red stripe. So I think it would actually be better if there was a little bit of a differentiation in terms of gloss, maybe, or even the color. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, if it goes badly, I'll just strip off all the paint and start over. Yeah, so these parts are going to be, that's how the stripes are going to work. Maybe. And it all comes down to just really, really careful masking and good luck with the paint. Hi, I'm doing fine. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate you coming back after I came back after being gone for so long. Things are going okay. I'm doing practically nothing and taking a long time to do it. I got the wing ready to be painted. Oh, that's just fine. Spring cleaning, huh? That's a good thing to do. Not necessarily a lot of fun, but something that needs to be handled. I'm going to be cleaning up too. I'm going to be cleaning up the paint spill here and a little bit here and then some on the nose, getting this ready to be taped for being painted red. And after this whole thing is painted red, then I'll touch up the inside because I'm sure some will leak in. And then very, very carefully paint the rim of the cockpit, which I will have to paint after the rest of it is painted. It's just going to have to go in that order, and I hope I don't mess it up. So I'm going to slog through the stream today by sanding this stuff off and then starting to tape it in preparation for the making it red. That'll be the next steps on this part of the fuselage. And if I paint this red, I might just go ahead and paint the horizontal stabilizer. I'm on. Hi, thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. Yep, I'm back at least for a couple of weeks before we're supposed to go on another trip. Yep, I have to complain about all this travel. I know some people think, "Oh yeah, travel, that's just great. Let's just do a whole lot of travel." But when you're an old homebody who just wants to sit still for a bit, I'm just whining about it a little bit. How did it go? How did session one go? I know it happened while I was gone. Did it go well? Okay, so you spent the entire session just hanging from the ceiling? Arachne's character, well, anyway, has some spider-like qualities. But did Arachne meet the other characters? I could paint. I could go ahead and paint these white right away too. I might do that. They don't need to be masked to be painted white. So the characters met up and Arachne's just hanging around, hanging out. Well, that doesn't fit very well at all. Good thing I'm testing this. Getting hung up. But now that I'm playing around with it and it's getting hung up, I will go out of my way to sand them down. And I want this one. Knitting set. Okay. It sounds like it was a fun session for everybody. I'm hoping that's true. Should use a file on this, but I'm not. I can feel pretty safe sanding these down because they're not going to show. These tabs go into those slots, but they're not going. Not going in. Uh, the bottoms of these, I'll show it to you in a minute. The bottoms of these do show on the inside, but after they're put in, they will be painted the metallic color of the attachment points on the inside. The ferry isn't on. Oh, that's right. This is all set in current times. The Amon's game is set in contemporary times, which I'm not used to doing, but it sounds like it's kind of fun. But of course, it makes sense that the fairy would be a social influencer. Online fans were sent to the shop. That's pretty intense. Will they be good customers? Oh, what's going on here? Is going to show or not? Yes. Okay. I'm seeing that there's sort of a gap here that I hadn't noticed before in a place that's actually going to show. So I'm going to fill that in and then hopefully remember that it needs to be sanded down. It's just right there, right there in the front. Are the other players enjoying the game as much? I hope they are. I hope it's going well. Well, if you're playing a second session, so it should be okay. See if I got the parts that were sticking. And the answer is no, I haven't. I don't know where it's getting hung up. You can see here where the tabs come through, and I'm just going to paint those the same metallic color, which will be really easy to do once this is in place. But it's getting hung up on the front here. Should go in much tighter than that. And then, okay. Well, I'm also seeing something here that this big gap here, that really shouldn't. I think it's probably okay. I think it'll be like an attachment point, but it's almost tempting to try to get rid of that. He has an online shop. Okay, that's interesting. But why not? I'm just going to take all the paint off of this, at least the high points, including the front and the back. Because it might be getting, who knows where it's getting hung up. Being confused by this. I thought, it's like there's, why is this showing? Why is there, I guess there's a little ridge there. I guess it's more of a ridge than a gap. Can't tell now. I would just as soon not put a bunch of filler on here. I don't have to. So have you introduced the online store to the game yet? Have you gotten the other players' reaction to it? I thought I was done with this piece, but no, I'm not. going quiet. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the. That was fun. So the fairy comes in being an influencer, right? And of course, everything is an online thing. And it's the first thing you ask is, are you online? Are you connected? And boom, all of her followers are now buying the toys. That's pretty fun. That's pretty cool, actually. I'm finding out that these parts are not ready for use. There's some issues with gaps that need to be filled in and sanded besides the fact that they don't fit. Stop working. Okay, well, it fits better now. Yeah, it's not bad. So apparently, it was just some excess plastic. I'll whittle it down just a little more. It's not hurting anything to do that. And then I need to fill in the gaps here on the supports because those can't show. Those need to be done away with. See that? So much time this model is just spent fixing issues with seams and paint spots and all sorts of stuff. Okay, well, if you've only got one mitten, it might as well be a scarf, right? Because what would you do with just one mitten anyway? So she's besides toys, is she going to sell? Might as well sell knitted goods as well. Why not? Now that you've been coerced into having an online shop, you could stay really busy just doing that. The garbage, what? His last specimen is going to be put into a garbage truck. Okay, so is the DM making up this NPC? It certainly gives you an evil adversary to work against. It's the introduction of someone right off the start like that. I have to look at this through the head magnifiers. I'm not sure what's going on with the leading edge. Okay. So you're off on a quest already. There's a seam there, but I don't feel. It's just out of alignment. You've got, okay. So the thing that's creating them has no name yet. You can call it anything you want. There's an advantage to that. You ended up in a fight right off the start. Wow. Okay, well, that, that's one way to get group cohesion, right? Okay, I'm finding that if I sand this, that the apparent little gap disappears, so I just need to sand it. That's good. It's going okay. I spent all that time cleaning the paint off these little tabs, but after I paint it, the voice, okay. Oh, yeah? How did that go? So, let's have a truce. I don't know. When a bad guy asks for a truce, you always have to be a little bit skeptical. Again, I'm going to have, after this is painted, I'll be doing the same thing all over again, though, because it'll have paint all over it. So I'd mask off the tabs, which I'm not sure I want to bother with, but I know how to fix it. I'm going to fill in the gaps. I remember. Well, that seems to be the right thing. You don't negotiate with kidnappers and extortionists. Can't see. I missed these gaps before. Well, I missed them because I wasn't looking. And I wasn't paying attention to this particular piece. So now I need to. This is probably going to be ironic. I'm going to spend all this time filling in these tiny little gaps that only I know are there. Nobody else even knows they're there, right? And then I'll mess up the paint and have to and then have a disaster to work with after that. Just know that's going to happen. Should all be prepared for it. You got some cursing going on, and yeah, why not? We can't in our game. We're a PG. We're trying to keep it, so that it doesn't get blocked or censored or anything by by Twitch or YouTube. So we're trying to keep it rated for kids. so it's child safe. But the self-destruct. Oh, I see. The radio was all part of its strength. It sounds like your DM arranged that really pretty well, and that you as players had a lot of fun with the session. So you said the next one is tomorrow now? Why am I just making a mess of this instead of... I'm not getting this where I want it, and I'm getting it where I don't. Just have to see how that turns out once it sets. Huh? And how was your save? Did you make the save? Okay, well, that was quick thinking. It was well done. Okay, I'm going to start cleaning this up. I'm not going to worry too much about the paint on the cockpit, other than to try to make sure it's not texturally not making a lump. Okay, I don't want a lump to show. It's going to be painted, I think, a flat black, so it's not too critical. This one here is going to be a problem, so I'm going to... I should do the hardest part first, but I'm not going to. I'll do the easy parts first. Oh, she just barely made it, so took no damage. How did the other players do? Did anybody fail their save? And were they okay? Oh, okay. Yeah, you probably, you don't expect expect after a fight for the adversary to blow itself up and take you with it. That was kind of a little bit mean on the part of the DM, just a little bit. Okay, so your save didn't save you from damage; it gave you half damage. That's pretty typical with that kind of thing. I guess it's okay that the DM did that to you guys. I don't know if I want to tape this stuff today or not. I don't know. Getting late in the stream, and it's the kind of thing that some of them. Okay, so the minions all blew up too. I'm gonna have to do some touching up around the nose here with the desert yellow. But I think I got that clean enough for that painting later. Let me see what I can do with this. painting the inside of this, taping the inside of this is going to be really important. There's a lot of leakage that came right through the seam here. And that seam is right there. So I'm not sure. There's just going to be touching up on the inside of this. I mean, it's just as well I painted the inside first, because I wouldn't want this, if this was painted red already, it would have been really bad. But as it is, I just need to make sure I get all the brown off. Because the brown will show through the red. And it'll just look like a huge, ugly stain on the very, very top, highly visible part of the Savoia. An incorporeal shade. Wow, that's pretty cool. What kind of character is that? Oh, a lot of paint. A lot of paint seeped through. This is really thick. I am rubbing off a lot of that yellow paint. But now, how was she able to change so quickly? I mean, wasn't the explosion unexpected? The red plastic is going to show through, but I don't think that will be an issue. I don't know, depending on how this comes out, I might have to give this a little spritz of the primer, so that there isn't want there to be a different colored spot there. Shadow Mage, okay. Oh, okay. That makes sense, that she was already in the shadow form. Otherwise, I would have thought, reaction time, there should have been a delay there. You have some pretty interesting characters going on here. I'm paying attention to this massive paint spill that happened right here in the front of the plane. So your minion was already out. Okay. The DM, the DM. It was pretty fortunate to avoid the damage. So are you guys going to have a rest before you continue or are you going to be continuing with the damage that you've already taken? We always beg our DM, can we have a short rest? Okay. I will guard the elevator. That's like a Monty Python skit, right? I don't know if you ever saw that. Quest for the Holy Grail. The guards are really dumb as a brick too. And it's like, we'll guard the door and we'll not leave until you tell us to. And it's like, okay, we will leave until you tell us. And they just get it all wrong because they're really dumb. And it becomes pretty funny. So you've got to just, all I'll do is guard this forever and ever. Until maybe given further instructions. I think, what I'm going to do here is that after I get this all taped up, is I am in fact going to give that a little spritz of primer before I actually paint the whole thing, just to make sure that the color is consistent. It'll mean, just waiting an hour or two for the primer to dry before going forward. But I'm taking off the existing primer in order to make sure I'm getting all the brown paint. Well, the desert yellow anyway. And why not be a little bit cautious, right? It's a very visible part of the plane, and I want it to look good. In order to make sure I'm getting the brown off, I'm getting it down to the plastic underneath. I guess that's part of it, just there's always these redo things, have to redo it. Okay, so she's at the end of this, she's just hanging up there. Well, she might have to wander about in a damaged costume for a bit, maybe a little bit. Well, that's right. She has a regeneration, so that can happen during gameplay, and you don't necessarily need to have a rest. That is a valuable thing. Hopefully, you won't get into trouble right away before she has a chance to recover. Okay. This isn't going too badly. It's just that definitely need to reprime the spot. But once it's taped, that shouldn't matter, because if it's going to leak the primer, it's going to leak the red. So it's all the same. It's all one and the same. This is where it leaked, right through here. So that's where the remaining brown paint is. I really wish I could find that other X-Acto knife. I don't know where it went. It's really quite annoying. Really, her costume? You have a detect yarn spell on your costume, or a detect yarn ability? It's like, I need to be repaired. and I can find my raw material. That's pretty funny. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So on Wednesday, just looking ahead, I need to transport some family members to the airport at like in the middle of the night. So I'll be up. Oh, that's just ugly. I'm finding more and more flaws on this as I rotate it. And this is going to be really hard to see, but there's just excess plastic on the edges of these. I'm going to use the slightly coarser sandpaper on the edges here. And it's that kind of thing where there's just this little filament of plastic that's just enough to look unnatural. And what it is from the molding process is that there's just a little excess plastic there. There's a little bit of a gap there, but I guess it's supposed to be there, just the way this is put together. It's good. Yeah, I know. Otherwise, unless you carried it with you all the time, you'd have to be carrying skeins of yarn constantly, right? That's all you'd be doing is carrying yarn around with you, using up all your bag space. Future concepts for your character? I mean, some of the things that we talked about here before I went away, or for the whole game? So what I'm seeing here that I hadn't seen before, which I should have, but I didn't until after I was primed, is that this piece was injection molded, and there's just where the two sides of the mold come together, there's just a little bit of plastic that oozes out, and it oozes out just enough to form a little ridge that's visible enough to be a pain, to look unnatural. To be eliminated. So I am reading away at it with the slightly coarser sandpaper, just because it's right on the edge. It's not going to show scratch marks, but I also want to be able to get rid of it sometime in my life. Well, still during my lifetime, right? Fortunately, the next bit. That's important, that you're doing that. That, when you're doing metagaming, working outside the game to address issues that within the game you don't bring that in. We work hard in our D&D show, to make sure that it works that way. I'm going to have to use a needle file on that. Okay. Sandpaper. This would definitely leave scratch marks, but I'm going to try to be real careful with it and only use it here to get rid of that little ridge from the injection molding process without making a mess of anything else. Too bad it was so obvious. But I am getting it to go away. And I haven't broken anything. The not breaking things is important. And the catching these problems before it's too late is also important. Definitely need to take care of these before the red paint goes on, because fixing it later is, as I have discovered, is really okay. So the DM has some of your backstory, and so so if it comes up, they will act in a way that's consistent with your story. That's good. Especially the part about people dying during the ritual. I mean, that wouldn't be something that the DM would necessarily. Well, it's good that they're aware of it. It's going to need a really good washing. Wash it with water. Usually I use isopropyl. Oh, yeah. And then he brought her back. We'd usually use isopropyl to do the washing, but in this case, I don't want to dissolve the primer that's on there. And it's got plenty of time to dry. And so I will give it a water wash. And then between now and, well, I have to mask it first. So on Wednesday, unfortunately or unfortunately, what you'll be watching is me applying masking tape to this all along the edges, okay, and on the inside with all the openings so that I don't get red paint all over the inside of this. And then between Wednesday and Friday, assuming I get the masking done, I'll be painting the outside red. And then on Friday, there will be an unmasking. Okay. That makes sense too. So the DM knows how you're going to be playing the character and can be supportive of it. So we'll do an unmasking on Friday, probably after I mask on Wednesday, and then touch this up with the primer, this blotch here, because I don't want that to show. I'll put a primer across this, catch that as well. And then have an unmasking on Friday and find out just how much touching up I need to do on the inside of this. Hopefully not too much, because I'm really happy with how it had turned out. And if the fuselage is done, I will very carefully put it in a paper towel into the done box until I get the wings and the floats ready. today there was a fair amount of prep work that needed to be done on this that I hadn't expected I would need to do because of the little mold mark ridges that had become apparent as I rotated this in the light. Yeah, after I'm done playing around with this here for a few more minutes, I'm going to pull the green out. Okay. When she's in that form, that's something that will come out later, though, right? That's not something that's immediately obvious in the game yet. This character development is really quite good. I don't know, if people are just listening and not reading the chat, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but Amon is describing their character in a game that they just started this last week. Actually, a very complex character. It's pretty impressive. If you're not reading it, you don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, you can always go on YouTube and watch it, and then you'll see. Well, I'm not sure this is perfect, but it's way better than it was in terms of all the little bits of excess plastic that we're showing, that instead of making it look like metal struts holding the wing up, it looked like pieces of plastic that were injection molded. I should have caught these before, and I failed. But I do believe I've corrected the problem. It's almost all of it. Okay. One's character can take on a separate form. That's what that's what they're describing now. And kind of the circumstances under how that can happen and what it means in terms of gameplay. So if you're not watching chat, that's what we're discussing. How that form will occur. Well, the exposition of that in the game will be through the role play, not through just a narrative description. But Amon had been working that out with the DM about how that might be played out. So sometimes it makes sense if you're developing a new character like that, to work with the DM ahead of time so that they're familiar with it and they know what can happen. You don't want to just surprise the DM with, oh, by the way, my character can do this. This thing that no one knew was going to happen, and the DM doesn't know what to do with it. But it's important to have some of those things worked out ahead of time so that the role playing actually is more effective. And that's what they're doing in their game right now. Okay. So this is mostly ready to be taped up. Pretty close to being ready to be taped up. I need to get a little bit of this off here just to make sure it doesn't form a like a lump. And then I'm going to give this a water wash and set it aside so that I can work on taping it on Wednesday. I'm not entirely sure how Wednesday is going to go. Like I said, some family members need to be taken to the airport in the way early in the morning, way earlier than anybody and reasonably should have to even be awake. And if I'm the one doing the transport, anyway, I'll try to be okay here on the stream. I'll try to get the stream going on time, and I'll be back in plenty of time for it. But whether I'm conscious or not, that's the question. That is the thing that is to be seen. Yeah, I should at least, let you see what I'm doing. I'm washing this. So the taping of this is, it looks pretty straightforward, but there's some tricky parts to it. Basically the inside stuff, like the holes. I drilled the holes in there for the machine guns to shoot through. I thought, you should be able to see that rather than just have it be blank. So I need all of the openings here, including around all the edges and those tiny little openings there where the gun sight and the canopy are attached. These little openings back here where the vertical stabilizer is attached. Those all need to be really carefully masked, just to minimize the amount of touch-up that I need to do later. Okay. And I don't want there to be a lot of leakage of paint to mess up the texture, because this all came out really quite nicely. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time with tiny little bits of tape, taping these holes and these gaps, like at the front and the back here, trying to get the tape down in there really nice and tight so I don't get a lot of leakage around these spots here. And then, assuming I'm successful with that, then between Wednesday and Thursday, I will touch up the primer, like here where it got messed up, where there was a lot of leakage from the inside, and paint it red. I'll be able to do that either later on Wednesday or on Thursday, so that on Friday I can do an unmasking and then either go, oh, well, that went really well, look at that, or go, oh God, what a mess. So much work I need to do to fix this. So one or the other on Friday. Oh, Brogger, hi. Yes, it was actually very fun. We have a granddaughter there in Germany, and she's almost 2. So she's learning to talk and run. Oh, just runs everywhere. Keeping up with her was quite a chore. But it was exhausting and exhilarating at the same time, but it was a really good trip. Now I'm only moderately jet lagged, and, not terribly more incoherent than usual. But thanks for asking. How are you doing? Are things going okay for you? But thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. I'm just telling everybody that on Wednesday, to take somebody to the airport really early. So I should be able to start the stream on time, but I might be even less coherent, then I usually am incoherent. Just warning everybody. But it shouldn't be a terribly stressful day. What I'll be doing is taping this inside and all of the edges in preparation for primer touch-up and red paint. Oh, congratulations. I hope one of those work for you, especially if it's a job that you would like. That's important, just to land something that you enjoy doing, if at all possible. I know not all jobs are joy all the time. I can certainly speak from experience on that, but having one that is mostly that something you like, that's great. So I'm glad you're doing well. So I'm trying to get this cleaned up, and then doing a bunch of delicate taping on Wednesday. When I paint this, I'm also going to paint the horizontal stabilizer. This is just painted red, so I'll just go ahead and paint it on both the top and the bottom. Do the bottom first, turn it over to the top. No, I would really like to paint the whole thing at once so that I don't have to worry about marring the surface. Let me see. Let's see if this will work. Do believe I can. I can get the alligator clip in there on the part that isn't going to show. Front, I need to put it on here. Do believe I can do it this way. Put on a nice rubber glove and hold it and spray the whole thing and put it in my handy dandy super duper piece of wood that I can't find. There it is. There, and let it dry. Ooh. Sometimes thinking ahead is such a good thing to do. Yeah, that way I'm not, this way I should be able to paint it pretty well and not have to worry about painting it on one side and flipping it over and painting it on the other. Okay, that's how I'm going to handle that. And then I'm going to paint these guys white in anticipation of doing the stripes. Which reminds me that I forgot that I tested some paint. Should be dry by now. Tested some paint for the stripes, the green part of the stripe, because I'm not using the decals. I'm going to cover this now. There it is. I needed to find the box. So this is designed initially for the use of decals for the red and the green, the white and the green stripes, but I decided against it because I want it to look better than just having decals. So the paints I had before, one was too light and yellow, and the other was too dark and brown. So I got two different colors. And I'm hoping one of them will work. Oh, that's pretty good. This other one is too olive. That's a pretty good green for like military planes. And that's what it's designed for. But this color, okay, that I mean, it's a little bit lighter, but it's really close. Yay. Yay. Park green it is. Park green it is. You can see that one is way too yellow. That one's way too dark. This is British Racing Green, which is to be used on the model. I was planning to use this on the model of the Lotus Ford that won the 1965 Indianapolis 500, which I remember because I watched it. And I got to see that same car a week after it won the Indianapolis 500 in Milwaukee. I lived in Milwaukee, and there's a racetrack there, and they always came to Milwaukee the weekend after the Indianapolis 500. It was the very next race, the second race of the season. So that was an exciting time because we got to see these cars on a mile oval, quite a different track from the one at Indianapolis. Okay. Yeah, and those cars just dominated. It was pretty amazing to watch them just go like 5 miles an hour faster than any other car. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot on a racetrack. Anyway, I bought a model kit. I actually made the original when it came out, like in 1966. I built the original, but I bought another one because of nostalgia or whatever, and was planning to build that. It was one of the semifinalists for this time around. But I bought the spray paint because it just looks better painted than it does just the bare green plastic. So there. But I have a color for the green. So that's good. That was, anyway, I guess it was worth the extra money that I spent to get it. I don't know if you can see these. These are the most infinitesimally small little decals ever. There's 16 of them. 16 tiny little white decals that are supposed to go on this plane somehow. I don't know why. And then there's some little white ones here that say something. And that's the gas cap. There's a decal for the gas cap, which is embossed into the top of the plane. At least that's what I think it is. I'm not going to mess with it now. But I'm very happy that I got a green that's very close to the green that I been putting the decals away. The green, I can actually make the attempt to paint those stripes, which is going to be very exciting because so much could go wrong that I don't want to go wrong. To not go wrong. What am I doing on time here? 12:40. Oh, I've got like 15 minutes. So let me just recap. Why not? Instead of doing something, instead of accomplishing something, I'm just going to recap while I put little scraps of paper away. What I managed to do today was not very much, as usual. I sanded down the leading edge of the wing and the trailing edge of the wing where I put the filler in before. Okay. Remember, ages ago, before I left, I found that there were gaps in the leading and trailing edges of the wings. Those are now filled in. I attached the ailerons in anticipation of painting the stripes. Okay. I discovered that there were gaps, that there was a misalignment on the bottoms of the pontoons, the floats on the edges of the wings. Got some filler on there that needs to be sanded down on Wednesday. Discovered all sorts of problems with the vertical stabilizer in terms of gaps. Filled those in that need to be sanded down the leading edge, and found that it's pretty much okay. And am prepared to start, masking this and then start getting paint on these parts, getting really close to doing that. And again, just to reiterate, instead of using the decals to instead of using decals to put stripes on the wings and tail, I'm going to paint it on, because that will look way better than decals if I'm successful in making it happen. So the tape on there is just holding it all in place. So I might I'm going to be doing a bunch of taping on Wednesday. The insides of this to mask all the gaps and things and all the edges, so I can paint the outside red. And I'm going to be painting the horizontal stabilizer red at the same time I do the fuselage. And I might actually then at the same time, I might put the first layer of tape on here for the stripes to put the white paint on. And the order in which I'm going to be painting these stripes, just to reiterate, is I'm going to be painting, the stripes go on here, okay, on the outside, right along this line, right along this edge, okay, is the inside of the green stripes. So I'm going to be painting the whole thing white first, all right? And I'm going to tape over where the white and the green are going to be, paint the wingtip and the rest of the wing, and then the same thing on the ailerons red. Okay, take the tape off. Hopefully at that point there'll be a beautiful clean line here between the red and the white. And then I'm going to tape over everything except where the green is going to go, and then spray paint the green on it. Okay, and when I take the tape off, there should be a red, white, and green stripe. And I've decided to paint both the top and the bottom of the wing with a stripe rather than just the top, which is where the decal went. So the first test really is going to be taping this off and painting it white, taking off the tape, unmasking it to see if I get a nice clean line, which I'm really hoping I get. Really want that to look nice and clean. And then the next test will be whether I can then get a nice clean line with the red and the white. And then the green stripe will be, the tetchiest one, the most difficult one. And the same thing is going to be happening on the tail. At some point, I can't avoid it. I can't build this until I start getting paint on it. It's getting to the point where that needs to happen. And then if I'm really lucky, all of that will come together. And then I can finish the fuselage. Oh, I should get this part out. I'm painting things. I don't know why I haven't. That little hatch that goes here. I hate to get out of sequence. I'm almost tempted, if that's going to be cemented on, and I don't know why it's separate. I really should have had that part out and prepped at the same time I was doing all of this. Because if it's going to be cemented on, I want it to be cemented on before I go through the trouble of... I don't think it is. I think it's meant to come off the way this looks. So maybe I can just do it as a separate piece. I mean, that might be okay. Just talking my way through, I'm trying to remember how to build this model, having been away for a while. But when I come back on Wednesday, then, I'll start getting this all ready for spray painting. I'll be just doing a bunch of taping at that point. Yeah. So doing a bunch of taping on this, and then I think I will actually do a bunch of taping on the wings, and then get some white paint on the rudder and the vertical stabilizer at the same time. Yeah, I might as well do that. On the wingtips, I can hold it up like that. Spray the wingtips. Break the thing that I just cemented on by setting it down stupidly. Sand these down. Okay, I have kind of a plan. I didn't spring forward on my clock, but I can add one. Yeah, I got some sanding done. I talked about what I was going to do in the future. You can hardly see any progress today. That's typical, I guess. On Wednesday, I'll be doing a lot of taping. I'll be doing a lot of taping in preparation for some going at it painting. Why not? And if everything goes well between Wednesday and Friday, this will be done, except maybe for some internal touching up, which I hope won't be very much. And I'll be making some progress on the striping, and maybe being able to paint the bottoms of these pontoons, the wingtips. And then I want to get that little hatch out. I try to remember to get that out so that I can get that prepped and get going. It's just, I didn't flip the instructions over to see where that went. And then, I'm just down to like final assembly. Oh, there's another piece that needs to be painted. Yeah, I mean, final assembly pieces, and who knows how long those are going to take, like prepping the propeller and the spinner and the base of the propeller. Where painted, what color are those? Deck tan, okay. Yeah. And then it'll look beautiful. Why not? Yeah. And I found a good green. That was a good thing. Well, thanks for putting up with me today. Once again, there was barely perceptible progress in the movement of the plane. On Wednesday, it will look like there's progress because there's going to be tape on everything. So that'll look like something. And then on Friday, we'll just see how it turns out. How the white spray paint worked and how the masking worked and what kind of touch-up is needed and what kind of little finish work needs to be done on the canopy. So Friday might be a pretty productive day. Wednesday, I don't know. It'll be boring. I'll try to think of something to talk about to fill the time because there's not going to be, there's not, well, mutter. I'm going to try to remember to get these little bits out, this and the cap for the motor, because while I'm waiting for some paint to dry or I need to take a break from the taping or something like that, I can work on those little bits. And I can even do things like this thing here. It's a tiny little piece. It's like the size of a grain of rice, really. Is the airspeed indicator, that tiny little propeller spins. It attaches to the side of the fuselage on. It isn't really a hole. It's just a little indentation. It attaches to the side there. The tricky part about this is going to be to not drop it. Oh, I failed in getting the green putty in Germany because I I couldn't get in to my Amazon account there. And by the time I did, I wasn't able to get it shipped to my son's address. But it is in stock. It is in stock now, so I'm pretty sure that I can get it sent here. But I appreciate you sending over the links for me. I really don't have any excuse other than that what happened was I was either babysitting our granddaughter, who is almost 2 years old and requires 110% attention all the time because she's either getting into something or running around. And it was delightful but exhausting. Or I was actually napping in between or cooking dinner for my son who was out working. But I am able to get the green putty now that it's back in stock. And I'm going to do that because it has to be easier to use than the stuff I'm using now. I'm starting to fade. Yeah, it is. It's almost time to end. So on Wednesday, I'm going to pull out the box now. I'm actually going to do this so I don't forget, because otherwise I will forget. Is these little patches and things that need to be put on. This hatch is actually off the screw already. Here, what I'm going to do, knock things over, is what I'm doing is I'm fumbling inside the box of parts here, where the screw is, where this last bit, the engine cover, is attached. I'm going to take this out so I can find it and remember to do it. And this got tangled up here. This inside here, hopefully still, is the clear plastic canopy. So, okay, those parts are still there. Okay, I haven't lost anything. But if I take these out now, when I come back on Wednesday, I'll remember them. All right. This is the part of the stream where I just start muttering to myself about stuff I'm going to be doing, and it's just basically saying, I know I'm going to forget this. I know I'm going to forget this. So let me prep so I don't forget it. And there, I am ready to not forget to do that. What I am concerned about is that I seem to have lost the one paintbrush that I definitely need because it's the only good paintbrush. Seriously? There it is. Okay. I was afraid I had lost this. This is my 10-0 paintbrush that I need for detail painting. Thanks for dropping in, Olbrager, and good luck with your job applications. Aman, thank you for sharing the development of your character. I'm looking forward to hearing how your second session goes, because you're doing that tomorrow. So on Wednesday, you'll be able to hear about that as well. That will help keep the stream interesting. What is this and why is it there? I don't know. I'm fumbling with stuff. That's always the time to say, thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be making infinitesimally small progress over a long period of time on the Savoia S21. I'll continue to do that on Wednesday. I will remember what I was planning to do, and I'll be doing it. So see you all on Wednesday. Thanks again for joining in. Have a good day. See you then.